I'd like to take a few minutes to let our panelists introduce themselves. We have a parent of a middle schooler, we have a parent of a high schooler, a parent of a college student, and a parent of an adult. So we do have a pretty diverse selection tonight. Before we begin, though, I want to remind everybody, if you've probably heard this from me before, if you've been to the conference and you've sat in something that I've participated in, what I want you to remember is what you're about to hear are personal experiences from parents about things that may have worked or did not work for their own child. If this is your first time in a room with other parents of people who stutter, take comfort that you know your child best. Only you have raised your child since birth, and your instincts and knowledge of your children are the most important thing. Listen with an open mind and have an open heart, and then thoughtfully consider what you've heard. And don't be afraid to share things or stories with your own child and say, this is what I've heard. Do you feel like that? And then open up discussion that way to tailor what works for your child. So thank you for being here. We're really excited to get started. I'd like to introduce first my friend Seth.
Thank you, Kristine, and thank you for moderating this. This is really just tremendous to see everybody here. It's unbelievable. I remember 4 years ago, I kind of reached out to Tammy, and that was the end of it, right? You know, we went to our first NSA, and it was pretty amazing. And this is a nice opportunity for me, because usually it's my wife and I, and she's doing all the talking and I'm nodding. So this is an opportunity for me to do some of the speaking and her nod or disagree without being able to speak. So we have a daughter who is a person who stutters. Her name is Jolie. She is 12 years old, going into 7th grade. We also have a 10-year-old boy who does not stutter and is very supportive. It was kind of happenstance that we fell upon the NSA, which was an understatement to say it's a blessing, as well as everybody we met, Tammy, Kristine, etc. And we've met mentors. We've been able to meet some great people. The most important thing for us, and really, is how it affects our daughter, and it's only positive. It kind of opened her eyes. We decided, you know, we're going to go give it a shot, but why does she need to meet other people who stutter? Wound up, her eyes open. She's like, I can't believe there are other people like me. And that was life-changing, to say the very least. And anybody who's met, you know, my daughter sees the real her when we're at the NSA conference, because she is in her element to the umpteenth degree. She'll hug anybody who wants a hug, and she'll dance for anybody. Well, she's not a private dancer, but she's a little dancer, whatever it is. But it's been great. We've met some great people and learned a bunch of great things. So we're very excited about it. And it's nice that we have people here who have high schoolers and college and adults who we've met as well. So please see us as a resource, as I see many of you as a resource and mentors as well. I don't want to take too much time, but I just want to say thank you for being here. I hope this is beneficial for all of you, as this is always beneficial for us. And I just want to introduce my friend Nikki to speak next.
Hi, welcome everybody. This is really exciting. I wanted to start by saying that I'm actually outside. My family is traveling this week. This is kind of our replacement trip for NSA, since we couldn't do our usual road trip to conference. So we're pulled over at a park in the state of Washington, just because we had Wi-Fi here. So it's a little bit noisy at times. So I'm going to mute out anytime I'm not speaking. So I hope it's not windy or too bad. But anyway, my name is Nikki Taulman, or Nikki. I have a 16-year-old son, Eli, who is a person who stutters. And then we have 3 other children. Oldest is 26, and then 24. And then I have a 14-year-old daughter, Bryn, who is not a person who stutters, but she has been as active in NSA with us as Eli has been. We came to our first conference in 2017 at the encouragement of Eli's speech language pathologist. She thought Eli was ready for that step, and it was pretty close to us for traveling purposes. So we made the leap, and it just, you'll hear over and over and over from every parent you ever meet that it was complete. It just changed our entire lives, not just Eli's life, but his brother and sisters, and his dad and myself. NSA is just, Eli's Lifeline. It has given him the confidence and the courage that he needs to work through his stutter. And he's a super happy 16-year-old, very, he's normal. He's just a normal kid. And his stutter does not define him. It just is a part of him. And he and I discussed a lot of these types of questions that we might talk about today. And it's so nice to hear him, how he's matured over the years. And I know that it's because of his involvement with NSA. He's met so many friends, and he is super bummed not to get to hug on his friends this year, but he's right now, as we speak, across the park on his laptop in the team room. So lifelong friends, not only for him, but for his sister, and as well for us as parents. It's good to see a lot of you that we usually get to see every year. So anyway, welcome everybody. Oh, and don't unmute. Introduce Kristine, my friend Kristine, the moderator. Let's hear what she has to say.
Thanks, Nikki. I am Kristine. I am the parent of 2 children, one of whom who happens to stutter. He's 19 years old. He's a sophomore in college this year, and he attends NYU, and we are from Arizona. We found the NSA about 10 years ago when we went to a family fun day that was held in our city. And we went after, I turned it down several times from my mom and the speech therapist, and I didn't think it would benefit us, and I didn't really want to go, and Kayden wasn't interested in it. And when we were there, we were surrounded by a handful of kids that stuttered. There were adults that stuttered. There was a speech pathologist that stuttered. We met Tammy. And at that point, I saw something in his eyes. And we got in the car because we had to leave early because he had to go to football practice. And he said, I cannot believe there are other people that stutter, and I know them in real life. And it started this blossoming in him. And at that point, we made a commitment to him and to each other that we would attend the conferences and become involved in the NSA. He is a more of a shy kid. Well, he's sort of an adult now, but at the time he was a shy 10-year-old, and he's a little bit more introverted. And, you know, part of that is his personality, but just getting to see him being around other people who stutter was remarkable. And he still benefits from it to this day, every day. And it's really just one of the best things that I feel like we did as a parent. So that's why I'm so excited to be here. There's 106 people in this room. This virtual conference, at the outset, it was such a disappointment that we weren't going to meet each other in person and we couldn't take a trip. But we've never had 106 parents in a room before. So this is an amazing making lemonade out of lemons experience. It's kind of giving me goosebumps. I want to introduce Annette, who I am proud to say is parent of an amazing human being. And I'm gonna let her tell you about that.
Thank you. Hi, Kristine. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Annette Onofri, and I am a parent of a very young adult who's going to be 31 next week, which is so unbelievable to me. When Sarah and I first started coming here, she was 16. And I remember having a conversation with Tammy, who told me there is no way you should let her come by herself. So this has become a tradition for us. This would have been our 15th conference together, and I have seen how the NSA has helped shape Sarah to be the wonderful adult that she is now. Stuttering has always been something that we never really spoke about until we came here. And I think even to this day, it's something her and her father never discuss. And probably most people don't even know she has a father, except Tammy did get to meet him recently, which was very nice. Yes. And yes, it was. We loved having you and Tony. Right before the pandemic started, Tammy was here for the Boston one-day NSA event, and we all joked about touching our face which so came true. But anyways, this is really a wonderful organization. There are so many amazing people, kids, adults, spouses that we have met over the years that really are lifelong friends for us. And, you know, stuttering is part of what Sarah is. And some days she does, and some days she doesn't. And she seems to be okay with whatever is going on with her, at least as far as her mother knows. I mean, Jess may know differently, but you know, I think that it's really been a wonderful, I know it's been a wonderful experience being involved with the kids, which she loved for many years, being involved with them. And she really has grown. And it's just, I can't say enough how wonderful thing it has been for us.
Thank you, Annette.
Kristine?
Thank you. Okay, it looks like we're getting a lot of great questions in the chat. They just keep popping up. This is a question I'm going to start with that I have heard over and over again on different Facebook groups. We have seen an increase in disfluencies for our child who stutters age 10 after school closure. It's hard to know if it's due to lack of speech therapy or stress of the pandemic, or if it's something else. Heads up, the speech therapist is going to be talking about this on Friday. But I think on a personal level, we all could probably weigh in on this a little bit. Seth, have you seen anything with Jolie specifically?
So it was different when she was younger, and the therapist, you know, was good, and it was helpful for sure. But I think everybody's gonna have their own experiences. Oh, you mean since the quarantine?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why she's here, right?
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, do you feel like she is either struggling with her stutter more during this closure, pandemic, quarantine?
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
Please.
Like usual.
I would just, right, I'm sorry, but you're not answering the question. I would say initially, yes. Like the first couple of weeks, the first month or so, we noticed a big increase in her disfluency. And, you know, she sees her speech therapist on Zoom anyway, because he lives downtown Atlanta. And we, you know, she hadn't seen him in a bit. And then we sort of realized, like, she's not talking out loud. She's not FaceTiming her friends. She's not Zooming with Carl. And so once we kind of got her into a routine of Zooming with Carl and FaceTiming her friends and being like just talking more, she was able to kind of get back into her, you know, stuttery flow type of thing. But she's in a pretty good spot right now, but the beginning was really difficult.
Okay. Nikki?
Yes, Eli and I actually talked about this this afternoon. I had noticed within just a few weeks that I could tell that he was having some problems with his fluency, that it was increasing. And, you know, he has been homeschooled, so he doesn't really have a lot of interaction outside of the home anyway, but he does go to a 1-day-a-week private school. And but I could tell pretty quickly that he was having problems with his fluency. And I asked him about that on the trip just a little while ago. I said, do you think that you have had more problems since the pandemic? And he said yes. And I asked him what he thought was, you know, the issue, what the problem was. And he said that when he is around other people, he is just more conscious of his speech and his fluency. And so he's a little more on point or on alert. And so, you know, he's able to navigate a little more clearly. Whereas when he's at home, you know, he's free to just stutter his little heart off. So he's stuttering more because he's at home where he more freely stutters. And so he hasn't really seen it as much of a problem as much as just noticed that, yes, his fluency has been harder for him since he's been home and a little more quiet. So
I think those are both good points and represent accurately two different things. I experienced kind of what you do with Eli. Kayden has always stuttered more at home because he doesn't care and he's most comfortable with us. So to me, I don't know if he's stuttering more in public, maybe on his classes via Zoom. And I also get what Denise and Seth, you're saying about Jolie. She needs that constant talking to stay in her inner flow to stutter more easily. So I think there's more than one answer here, which is typical with stuttering. Okay, so I see one here. Is it common for a child that stutters to have other mental issues such as depression, anxiety, easily frustrated? My 14-year-old daughter, I see this with, but I didn't notice it with my son who doesn't stutter. Quite frankly, none of us are doctors, and none of us are psychiatrists, psychologists, or licensed therapists. I think that would probably be an interesting question for the panel of doctors tomorrow, just so that you get an answer that's not pure speculation. I think that any parent with a child that thinks that whether they stutter or not, that they may need help, there is nothing wrong with getting the help. I have 2 kids. They both have been to counselors and only one of them stutters. So there is no shame in that. It's just like going to the doctor if you think you have strep throat. So if you feel like there's something that is beyond your expertise as a parent and you need to bring in professional help, do it. Let's see, what else do we have up here? Speech therapy. There's a lot of questions about it. We do have a panel on Friday, and we can certainly get a speech therapist's opinion on it. But I do think it's always valuable to have parent opinions on it. Annette, can you talk about your experiences maybe with Sarah growing up? Did she enjoy therapy?
Well, she had therapy at school, which really was not very valuable to her. When she was in the 7th grade, I believe it was, her English teacher reached out to me and said that she was really having a problem. And she started going to a therapist who specialized in stuttering. And she's actually the person who introduced us to the NSA. So I think that it was very valuable for her. She doesn't use her tools necessarily, but I just think that, you know, at this point in her life, if she stutters, she's fine. If she doesn't stutter, she's fine too. But she definitely had a good experience with her therapist.
Was there ever a time that she came to you and expressed maybe that she didn't want to go anymore?
Well, when she was in middle school, she stopped going for a while. But then, like I said, when the teacher reached out to me, then she started going again, and we found somebody that she really connected with, and somebody who didn't just do drilling with her, somebody that, you know, really had her practice calling and, you know, all the things that a person who stutters really struggles with. She worked with her on real life things as opposed to, you know, exercises. And I think that made a big difference for her.
Okay, right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Seth, I've heard a little bit about Julie's experiences with therapy before, so I think that you guys probably have something to add to that conversation.
Yeah, she's here. Yes, and she's had, I'd say, good experiences. I think they've all been beneficial in different ways. Currently, she's with AIS, and Denise mentioned Carl, and it's been very positive. I think predominantly it's working on her more than her speech, and that's I think the key to all of this is just confidence in who you are, who she is, and with that, I think she gets more personal power, if that's something. She works on techniques which, you know, anybody who's a person who stutters, I think, wants to use their techniques all the time, but then there's real life and they're not able to because they're in the thick of it, so to speak. However, I mean, it's been beneficial without question. At the very least, I'd say that it's brought us to the NSA, but a lot more than that. It's just created, you know, a space for her where she could grow, really outside of home, where we're gonna not push her, we're gonna support her as much as we can, but it also helps us as parents, really. You know, I don't know if we knew initially to let's not finish our sentences, right? That's something that we heard a million times after the fact, and that definitely helped. But more so for her, and it's been positive, and where she is now with the therapist, Carl at AIS. It's really been very positive.
Great. Nikki?
Yeah, Eli he had some speech therapy in elementary school before we brought him home to homeschool. And then he was home probably about a good year before he really started to block and do some sucking in and some things that we felt like his school therapy maybe had kind of worn off. He'd kind of forgotten some things. And so we found a private therapist who actually had zero experience with fluency. And she was phenomenal. She was so good with him, and she learned. She, reached out to other professionals. She did the things that you said, Annette. Had him make phone calls. Actually took him out after a long period of time. Went out to dinner with him so that he could order food. She pushed him out of his comfort zone, but also, was very kind and loving and supportive. And Eli kind of ended up the way that Jolie has done, where she ended up almost being more his personal counselor than his speech therapist. And he got to a point where he really didn't need to see her any longer for the actual tools for speech therapy. But after every few months, he would say, I really kind of need to go back and see Carmen. And I think he just needed to go back so that she could give him a confidence boost and, kind of ground him. And he hasn't seen her in years, but she posts on all of his, Facebook posts, and she's always encouraging me. She's wonderful, and he knows that if he ever needed to see her again, that he could contact her and do that. But he just uses his techniques when he wants to, and otherwise he's confident with his fluency, and so he just doesn't worry about it. But I think that speech therapy had a lot to do with building his confidence so that he didn't feel that he needed speech therapy anymore, if that makes sense. So
it does, thanks. I'll offer just a slightly different perspective. Kayden had speech therapy from 6 to 10, and I do want to address, there is a question in the chat where we're talking about school speech therapists. School speech therapists are qualified speech therapists. It's not that they're not qualified. And there was a question about the distinction between a private speech therapist, maybe that has a practice like in your neighborhood, versus the speech therapist at school. Speech therapy is a really large specialty. So to find someone who's actually had the additional training in stuttering may be difficult. And so you may be lucky and have someone at school that can handle that, and you may not. So it's a personal choice. Does your insurance cover outside speech therapy? And all of that goes into it. So I just wanted to clear that up. So regardless, when he had a good speech therapist, he did school speech therapy where the lady was super, super nice, and really just kind of worked on him being comfortable speaking. And he got to the point where in speech therapy, he was almost 100% fluent, and I did not understand why he wasn't 100% fluent the second that we left speech therapy. And I was expressing, my frustration, like, what are we doing here? When is this going to be done? Because he's 100% fluent with you, and then we go home and he's not. And he's irritated because I'm telling him to use his techniques and to do all the strategies, and he doesn't really even want to talk to me anymore. That was when the speech therapist suggested that we go to the NSA, which at that point was, as a mother, was an eye-opening experience to realize that, number one, stuttering does not have a cure. He was at the age now and had been stuttering long enough that he was going to stutter for the rest of his life. And if you try to yourself as a person who doesn't stutter to use the speech therapy techniques all the time, as I was expecting him to do, it's exhausting. Of course you don't feel like talking because you have to play everything out in your head and change your whole speaking pattern. So after we went to the conference, he said, I don't want to go to speech therapy anymore. I said, and I really struggled with that because I thought, how do you know when you're doing the right thing? But we had a lot of back and forth about it, and I told him, okay, I understand. I don't care. I just really want you to talk how you want to talk and feel comfortable saying what you want to say when you want to say it. And you know that if you want to go back, you can go back. And he's 19 and he has so far not wanted to go back. And that's okay. That does not mean he didn't have accommodations at school, because he did. Does not mean that everything was 100% perfect all the time, because it wasn't. And doesn't mean that there were days that he still wished that he didn't stutter, because naturally he still has those days sometimes. I don't think there's 100% answer that is a one size fits all. So I think the best that you can do is find the person that makes your child feel good, with something that makes sense to you, that deals with, and his therapist did this. This is nothing to be embarrassed about. You should practice stuttering so you get used to stuttering. You should try to stutter in a way that you're releasing some tension so you're not tense about it. And he felt good about himself, and he pretty much still does. So that's my 10 cents on that. Let's see, I have twins. One is a person who stutters and one is not, but they're not identical. Oh, that was in response to, is there anyone in the group that have twins? And if so, do both twins stutter? I know that you guys are answering that. I'll chime in that there are a set of triplets. One of them is a chapter leader. I was on a call with him last night. In the triplets, there's 2 identical brothers. One brother stutters, one doesn't. So I think that I've seen a few other sets of twins at the NSA conference. Annette probably knows a couple too. It's because she's been coming for so long.
No, I can't say that I do know any other twins.
No? Okay. Beyond that, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear what Jerry says about it. I did see a bunch of questions from the beginning about parents. If a parent stutters, do they have kids that stutter? I think that the 100% cause of stuttering is not known, but it is thought to have a genetic component in some families. And that was reiterated in the movie that we watched last night. And Dr. McGuire has talked about that also. Does it mean 100% that your child will stutter? No. Does it mean that if your child stutters, someone else in your family stutters? No, but maybe. Let's see, what else? What accommodations have been useful in school? Nikki, Eli is homeschooled.
He is. But this fall, a funny story. Eli is very introverted, has always really pretty much wanted to remain homeschooled and intended to be homeschooled through the conclusion of high school. He'll be a junior this year. This pandemic actually it showed him that the little bit of interaction that he does get outside the home, he really missed. He really struggled with that. So he actually has made a decision to go back to public school part-time this fall for the first time since 2nd grade. And he'll also be doing dual credit college classes. So he will go back to high school as a junior, but he will not have any accommodations for his speech. So he will just go back as a traditional student.
Okay. What about for Jolie, Seth, and Denise?
Jolie was talking. So, let me just the question again. Sorry, one more time, because she got me distracted. Tell me the question again, Kristine.
What accommodations have been beneficial for Jolie in school?
So, she's been the best accommodation, right here. I mean it. You know, Denise has been a bulldog, meaning talking to the teachers. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, I'll take the bulldog.
Oh, I mean, really, she's spoken to the teachers, you know, a 504. We've kind of really trying to be ahead of the curve with everything. We also ask, you know, Julie to talk to the teachers, not for necessary accommodations, but really for them to be aware, don't pick on her unless she's raising her hand, which is something that is key and I would say critical to success, because that's the emotional side of it that people may not think about. It's working with them, and the teachers, and I say more than the administrators, know that much about stuttering, very little. So it's nice when we can make them aware of it. They've heard of it and they've seen it before, but accommodations are really what you make of it. You can create it because it's not very common. Things like dyslexia are very common, right? But stuttering is not nearly as common as that. So I think it's our part as parents to go in and get the accommodations, or at least educate, which is something that we do on a regular basis every year. And Julie has begun to advocate for herself somewhat, but it's primarily Denise, and we create those more than anything.
Yeah, I would just add that throughout elementary school, I would reach out to the teacher ahead of time, but this year for her first year in middle school, we crafted together a letter. Well, she crafted a letter with her speech therapist to just let the teachers know like what to expect from her in the classroom and what we expect for her in the classroom, having nothing to do with any kind of IEP or 504, just like straight up, this is what she needs to be successful in your classroom. And then separately, she has a 504 that kind of outlined a couple things. It's a little bit vague, but the being vague has kind of helped us. But the teachers have been really grateful with the information because they don't know. And so it just kind of gives them the heads up like, okay, great. And this is, what she needs. And, she's sitting right next to us now.
Oh, good. Hi, Julie.
So far, so good.
I think what worked for Kayden specifically in terms of accommodations are things that are similar. When he was in grade school, he really didn't want a lot, but typical things would be, if my hand's not raised, don't call on me. Let me finish what I'm saying. Don't ask me if I know what I'm going to say. Don't try to finish my sentences. And those don't sound like accommodations, but those are things that people who aren't used to hearing stuttering naturally do. So they were things that we brought up. As he got older and he started to feel a little bit more self-conscious, probably just because he was 11, 12, 13, and 14, and everyone that age feels self-conscious, he wanted the ability, if he felt more comfortable, to do a presentation in front of just the teacher before school or after school versus having to get up in front of the class. He wanted the option to be able to do that, and he only exercised it a handful of times. I do know, like, parents have asked me, well, how do you know if they're just taking advantage of it? Well, typically you know if your child is prepared for their presentation or not, and if they've worked on it. Now, if they just start up, tonight and do tomorrow morning, and then they say, oh, I don't think I can give it. Okay, that's a whole other issue. But anytime he did say to me, Mom, I really don't want to present on this tomorrow, I knew he was ready to present. It was he didn't want to have to stutter in front of his classmates. As he went through high school, it changed, because then he said to me one time, I really don't want to present in front of everyone tomorrow in Spanish. And I said, well, you can talk to Miss Flores. She already knows, and you can do it before school. And he said, well, what am I going to tell my friends? And I said, what do you mean? Well, they're going to ask me why I'm not presenting and everyone else is. And I said, well, what are you going to tell them? That you don't want to stutter in front of them? And he said, they all know I stutter, and they're just going to think that that's dumb. And he's like, forget it. I'm just going to do it in front of them. And that was a turning point for him when he realized, yeah, they already know he stutters and he's going to stutter. So do it. And he did. So since then, he really didn't. And that was his sophomore year, quite honestly. But setting your child up for success, whether you go through the whole formal process of an IEP or not, is teaching them how to advocate for themselves. And for me, Kayden learned the best by example. So what we did was, online on the NSA webpage, they have all the different brochures that you can get. And they have some on the Stuttering Foundation website too. And I would buy them or print them off or make copies and go to school and meet with all of his teachers. And first I did it by myself. And then I brought him with me when he was in like 5th and 6th and 7th grade. And then he started writing the emails and I would read them. we had a meeting at the high school the freshman year because I wanted all of the teachers at a new school to know. And the school said, we really would prefer it if just Kayden came in, not you. And I said, that's not gonna work for me because he's 14 years old and there's gonna be 10 people at a boardroom and he's not comfortable doing it by himself and you guys need to hear what he has to say. So I'm gonna sit there and he's gonna lead the conversation. And they did it and they were fine. And then after his freshman year, he took over doing it himself. And he's entering his second year in college. He still tells the professors via email, I just want you to know that I stutter. You're going to hear repetitions in words. I might have a block. It doesn't mean that I don't know the material. I just want you to be prepared. It also means that in a seminar class, I may have a hard time jumping into a heated debate. So I'll always email you responses after the class if I feel like I haven't been able to contribute. And that has worked. Okay.
Kristine, can I
Yeah.
ask her just a quick question or answer a quick question that was on there? Someone asked why, what's the benefit of going to the NSA? And, one of the big things is, so I see all 4 of your kids as rock stars. I know you're not a kid, Sarah, anymore, but, Sarah led our kids and is a rock star. Eli, you said, is an introvert. He came up to me at the bowling alley the first moment and wouldn't shut up, which is fine with me, right? Which is wonderful to hear. And Kayden is, I don't have to say anymore, he's a rock star, right? So, and I think my Julie's a rock star, but I'm a little biased. But I think they all kind of came out of their shell. But more so than that, what's the benefit for us? It was eye-opening. Jolie said, I can't believe there's more people like me. And then we get, you see Steve. Is Steve there? I want to see Steve's picture. He's a big, burly dude. And I'm giving Steve hugs. And it's just, but it's all that. It's such a community that gives parents so much and more confidence that, I can call Kristine, I can call Kim, I can call whoever here or FaceTime or anything else. And it's just such easy access. Now, this is great. Please don't get me wrong. But when you meet somebody, the first day you're a little bit off. And then after that, it's like you've been in camp for a month and a half as a kid. It's the parent talking, right? And I'm not wrong. So if you've been there or you get to go, you'll see it's really an unbelievable experience for your whole family. It's like Disney World, but it's really something else. So to answer that question, this is fantastic, but there's nothing like the real thing.
Agreed. I just want to comment to remember in the chat to be kind to each other and to not necessarily create undue stress about doing the wrong thing. I think overall everyone is being so super supportive. But everything's not one size fits all. I mean, the fact that you may order your son's dinner tonight because he does not want to say he wants a cheese quesadilla does not mean that he will not be able to do it himself at school when they go back, in 10 years when he lives alone. I know I struggled with that a lot. Like, what's too much to do? Am I hovering too much? Am I enabling him to not speak when he doesn't want to speak? I think, yes, that's always a possibility with parenting, but there are times that you can be the little bit of relief that they need to get through that night or maybe that morning or that day. And then I will tell you, I ordered Kayden's food and he'll tell you the same thing probably until 18 months ago when he was 19 years old. But I did not order it when he was at school. I did not order it when he was on field trips. I did not order it when he went out with his friends once he started driving. But if he and I were out to dinner and he did not want to talk to the person in Panera, no biggie, because he was talking all day long when he wasn't with me. It's hard. I mean, some kids will say, don't ever order for me. He would say, please order for me. You have to ask your kid what they want you to do. Let's see, we have about 10 minutes left and we have a lot of questions. Annette, what do you think is the best piece of advice that you got or what impacted your parenting a person who stuttered the most?
Well, actually, at our very first conference, I was in a workshop where the parents had to learn to stutter. And that was the most eye-opening experience, where they taught us what to do. And then we had to go around through the hotel and speak to people. And it was just amazing to see how it felt, that that's how your child felt. That really was really very eye-opening. And also to see that people from other parts of the country that you become friends with have done the exact same things that you've done, and you will continue to do make those mistakes, but at least you know that you're not the only one who's done it.
Seth and Denise, what is the best piece of advice that resonated the most with you?
That's actually a hard thing to answer, because I feel like every year we go, we get something else. But I mean, for us, I think the biggest thing, well, for me, I should say, was probably our first year going. And many of you have heard me speak before, and Tammy knows I did not want to come because I did not think it would be good for our family. Julie, this one, she was 8 at the time. And you know, I had sort of a path forward of like, okay, she stutters. None of us like this thing that's happening. Our speech therapist promises he can fix it. You know, let's go get it done. He told us about the NSA, but you know, kind of warned us what to expect. And about halfway through the first day, I just like broke down in tears because I realized we were doing it all wrong. Everything, I just got the chills. Everything I thought I knew was not necessarily wrong per se, but like my path to fix my child was like hard stop, turn around, what are you doing? And learned how to sort of evaluate my speech therapist based on a session that we were in, and then just hearing Kristine speak, you know, one of the first conferences, and a woman named Beverly who told me the sooner I accept our daughter's journey, that she is going to be a person who stutters, the easier it will be for all of us to move forward. And so that was it. That was eye-opening for me. That was day 1 and day 2. So I was like, okay, we did the right thing by coming, and it's, you know, been a blessing ever since.
Yeah, and for me it was I was at the dad's panel. It was the first thing I ever went to at the NSA, and I had no problem speaking, but I was not sure what to say. And I said, the only thing I know to do is love my daughter, right? I'm going to support her. And everybody kind of shut me up there, said that's the best thing you can do. So if you support your child, you know, husband, wife, etc., then it's great. And that was, it was great for me because she's the bulldog out there, and she's a bulldog. What am I going to tell you? So, but it works, right? I'm the hugger, even though I seem like I'm the madman. But no, it's that's great advice. Just if I can share that, just continue to love your child and support them, and from there, a lot of things will fall into place.
Thank you. Nikki?
Yeah, actually, Eli and I kind of talked about this a little bit today. For me, again, first conference we went to, first workshop I went to was on a study that actually I think the results were just recently released, that involved an NSA student who participated, Nate, and it was about self-advocacy. And the whole purpose of the study was to determine if the student advocates for themselves, you know, it discloses their stutter, versus whether, say, a speech therapist discloses the stutter for the student, or whether mom discloses the stutter for the student. Which of the, and it checked different things, but one was which one of those has the most positive effect on the listener and which one has the most negative effect on the listener. And mom should never disclose her child's stutter. It provided the most negative response to the listener. And that was so huge for me, because as parents, I think we want to step in and help our child to not be humiliated or to not feel embarrassed. And so, you know, you walk up to someone new and you say, "Hi, I'm Nicole and this is Eli and he stutters," you know, because you want to get the elephant in the room, you know, disclosed, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's the most the most mortifying thing for your child. It's, you know, they just stand there. But secondly, it makes the listener uncomfortable. And so that was huge for me to, and he and I have talked about that. There have been times that he has actually asked me if I would disclose for him. But we talk about it ahead of time. And that is my biggest takeaway, I think, through the years, has been to let him lead. Let him make the decisions. You know, Kristine, you mentioned ordering in a restaurant. You know, 90% of the time, Eli will order his own meal. But sometimes he'll say, Mom, would you do that for me today? And I'm fine. You know, before we go into a new situation, I will ask him, do you want me to step in and assist you in any way, or are you good? I let him pick that, you know, with him going back to public school. You know, I said, how do you want to approach this? Will you want to disclose to your teachers, or will you, you know, do you not want to do that? And he said, I think it would be a good idea to do that. So then we discussed, okay, when we go to the, you know, meet the teacher night, and you go in and your teacher says, hi, I don't think I know you, and you introduce yourself. Do you want me to disclose your stutter, or would you rather? And of course his answer was, I would rather do it myself. And the study backs that up. And so that's going forward. I leave it to Eli. We talk a lot. We share. I want to know his feelings. And some days his feelings are completely different than the day before. It really is on a day by day basis sometimes. But he's a smart kid. He knows what he can handle on certain days and what he's comfortable doing. And, you know, it's not my place to guide his stutter. He needs to be able to guide his own journey. And I think that's been a huge confidence booster for him as well.
I think that's really relevant. And Holly, I saw your message in the chat, and I think that it really is profound advice to ask your child, how do you want to be supported? What does support mean to you? What do you want to talk about? I remember leaving, you know, different workshops and thinking, oh my gosh, we're not talking about a stutter enough. And then I would hear from someone else, oh, maybe we're talking about it too much. I think you need to ask your child and then listen to what they say and take your cues from them. And Nikki, I think that a lot of that's what you said too. We have a few minutes, and I don't think anybody's backed up in this room after us. And I think we've seen bullying come up, and I think it's an important thing for all kids, but you know, it also for our kids that stutter. So the question is, can you speak about any experiences of bullying and the narrative you use to support your child? I would suspect that to some degree, we've all probably been there with our kids that stutter, or maybe with our kids that didn't. I could share a quick story about Kayden. When Kayden went to the same school from kindergarten to 6th grade, same neighborhood, so he was with the same group of kids. He didn't even realize he stuttered in 1st grade when his teacher brought it up. I noticed it when he was 4. The pediatrician was like, oh, he talks so fast because he's so smart and he's going to grow out of it. And I totally was so used to the way that he talked until his 1st grade teacher told me that he was stuttering, which I did not believe until I listened to him. Then I was like, oh my gosh, he is stuttering. So for him, it really wasn't a big deal. He started going to speech therapy, no biggie, all his friends knew about it. But 3rd grade, 4th grade is when his friends, who had been his friends, started to notice that he stuttered. And they started coming up with different nicknames, and there were these issues on the playground. And
I'm not muted.
There was one boy in particular that was really difficult. So how did we handle it? Obviously, we talked about it a lot as a family, about bullying in general, and it's not personal, but obviously it is personal. How did we handle it outside of how we talked about it with him? You know, we tried to tell him how to deal with the kid at school, but beyond that, he was a 3rd grader. Like, really, how much can he do? I went to the teacher. Like, I did not want this kid next to my kid anymore. When it was happening on the playground, I went to the principal. I wanted somebody out on the playground to deal with this. When I felt like it wasn't really being handled, my husband started leaving work and being a volunteer on the playground to be there, so that as a buffer, that, you know, someone is not really going to break the rules when there's a parent there. as he got older, this kid progressed with him, and he's still a problem through 6th grade. Kayden also was having some other issues where with other kids, everyone was noticing his stutter. I took a step back from my job where I could go to lunch and be a visitor and bring him and his friends out into a separate environment. I got super involved at the school. I knew all of the parents. I knew all of the teachers, and I know not everybody can do that. And I did it to the ability that I could do it. To constantly have more ears. I knew the people in the lunchroom. I knew the people on the playground. I knew the crossing guard people. And there were always people looking out for Kayden to make sure that, not that he was being babied, but this kid who was a bit of a problem didn't have the opportunity to corner him and talk about it. And of course, Kayden did do a presentation about stuttering, and that helped with everybody except for the one kid. And so that was why we had some other techniques that we used. Seth, Nikki, Annette, did you guys have any experiences with bullying?
I haven't had any with Jolie. She had a good set of girlfriends, so nothing really happened, and I'm glad, because I don't know how I'd handle it. Regardless of her,
Yeah, we've been very blessed. Eli has always been treated really well by really anyone he's involved with. This year going to school, I'm sure that, it's kind of an area that of concern and nerves that he has, will this be an issue? But I just highly recommend a younger sister who is going to be right there at his heels. And she even asked me, am I going to be in trouble if I, take somebody down if they were to ever make fun of Eli? And of course my answer was, no. So, but we've been very blessed that we have not had any bullying issues because of that. And I think a lot of that's because he talks about it and he shares, and he doesn't try to hide his stutter. He himself doesn't make it a big deal. And so I think that others around him just naturally he's a kind kid. He's a friendly kid. And I think that overrides his stutter, and he's been real blessed not to have to deal with that.
Annette?
I don't think that Sarah was ever bullied. I think that she was very quiet. And I know her 4th grade teacher, who we still know, always said that she didn't even know that she stuttered. So I don't think it was a problem, unless, of course, she didn't tell me. But I'll ask her when we get off this call.
To be continued.
Exactly.
Okay. There is a question about virtual sessions for speech therapists. I think right now with the pandemic, I've seen doctors virtually, and I say go for it. I think that they are well equipped to do it virtually. I don't think you have anything to lose there. I guess we are almost about done. Oh, I do have in bold, bilingual kids who stutter. I'm not sure what the question is. I did see upwards, if you teach your kids a second language, will they stutter more or not? I think if you're raised in a bilingual household, they're probably going to stutter in both languages just because they're bilingual. Kayden took Spanish from 7th grade all the way through 12th grade. He stuttered in Spanish. It was more difficult for him because he couldn't word switch like he likes to do in English. But he still, he was a successful Spanish speaker. He received A's. So I definitely think that, do it. Teach your kids as many languages as you can. I wish I knew more languages. I think that we'll probably close right now with saying just that we have so many new parents who have never been to a conference. I think, Seth, you really touched on what it's like to go to a conference. So maybe Nikki and Annette and I will close with why you should come to a conference. I'll start. You should come to a conference because you cannot even imagine what it is like to be in a hotel that the entire lobby is filled with people who stutter of all ages. Your child,
don't stop.
And they don't stop. They talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. You will see You will see grandparents, you will see great grandparents, you will see toddlers, you will see parents with their kids who stutter, you will see families of people who stutter, you will see people from all over the country, you will see people from all over the world, you will see people of all different professions, you will see so many different ways to have a successful life. Your child will light up, whether they're introverted, extroverted. My kid still stood next to me he still kind of does at the conferences, and he's 19. It is unbelievably amazing. Everybody should try to go one time. I do not think that you will regret it if you listen, and if you sit down, people talk to you. Like, everybody wants to be your friend, and everybody wants to hear your story, and everybody wants to tell you their story. It is a community like you cannot even imagine. And what it does for your kid will last their entire life. So that is my short commercial for the conference. Nikki?
Yeah, and not just for your kid, that's, you know, your child that stutters, whether that child's little bitty or, you know, an adult, but the whole family. I mean, that first conference that we went to, you know, it was what, 3-4 years ago. You know, we were there a day or so, and the comment was that, you know, it was life-changing, but not just life-changing for Eli, life-changing for all of us. And, you know, I've met just wonderful friends, and, you know, Bryn, his younger sister, and, you know, has met just best friends. We were leaving the very first conference, and both of our children said, we will give up our family vacation every year to go to conference. And so now conference is our family vacation. And we're always so super excited to find out where we get to go next, because we start planning our trip like the second we find out where we're going. And, you know, we road trip it. We always drive, and we, you know, we make it it's a huge deal for our family. And, you know, this year is so incredibly difficult. You know, it's just more than information. It's connection. And, you know, I tell people that those 4 or 5 days that Eli spends with his friends and learning and sharing is his reboot for an entire year. It's what gets him through an entire year. And the fact that he wasn't able to be with his, you know, he just got off of his Zoom meeting with his friends, and I can tell you right now, it wasn't the same. And,
Right.
you know, it's difficult, and it's difficult for me. I just want to burst into tears because, you know, we're not all now, you know, hugging and sharing and grabbing a cup of coffee and maybe a glass of wine. And there is nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Save your pennies, and make it a commitment for your family. And this is something that we will do as a family until the day that Eli decides he no longer wants to go. And I honestly don't think that will ever happen. He just said, he's behind me. He just said, it'll be never, by the way. We'll do this every year for the rest of our lives if NSA is in existence. So just got to do it. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Thanks,
We miss
Nikki.
you guys. Mm-hmm.
Annette, I know you and Sarah have a special relationship with the NSA.
Yes, we do. And it truly was life-changing for us. I think the biggest thing was for Sarah to have friends who understood what she's going through. And for me, meeting parents that also know what I go through, and that they go through the same thing. And even though we only see each other once a year, it's like no time has passed, and it's a fun time to be together.
Thank you.
I would highly recommend it.
I think,
recommend.
Thank you. I think I will probably close on something that Denise said a couple of years ago, that until you as a parent attend the conference, you don't even realize that you need support. And then all of a sudden you have it. And it really is an amazing feeling. I truly appreciate all of you guys coming tonight. I really, really wish we could be in person. But again, this is an amazing opportunity for all of us. If we didn't answer your question, if there's anything that I can do for you, if you need to know who to contact for something, where to go for something, send me an email. It's on the webpage. email Tammy at the info@westutter.org. She'll direct it to me if you can't find my email. I'll be with a different panel on Friday. I'd love to have you again, and just enjoy the rest of your week.
And Kristine, I was just going to point out that, I would be more than happy to jump on a FaceTime or a Zoom appointment with, anyone who has extra questions and maybe we didn't answer, Eli being a high school student, or just asking, what more specific questions about conference itself. I would be so more than willing to do that. So if you get someone who reaches out to you that has questions about, high school age students, or, I have a 14 to 18-year-old son, and he's feeling kind of, isolated and alone. And, I have a great 16-year-old son who, is super personable and would love to chat and reach out as well. So I'm here. Please pass along any parents that would want to contact me. And I'm not this week because we're on vacation, but next week.
Next week you're open.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening, Kristine.
Thank you.
Moderating.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.